What if the world had never seen Nike? Think about it. No Air Jordans, no famous slogan, just do it, and none of the greatest athletes wearing that iconic swoosh. Imagine Cristiano Ronaldo, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or Serena Williams stepping onto the field without the brand that shaped sports history. Hard to believe, right? Yet, here's the truth. Nike began with absolutely nothing. Not money, not factories, not investors, not even a clear plan. All it started with was a simple dream inside the mind of a young man. He didn't know if he would win or fail, but he had one powerful vision: to create shoes that the best athletes in the world would one day wear. And today, that dream has grown into a company worth more than $190 billion. But how did such a transformation happen? How did one man move from selling sneakers out of the trunk of his car to building the largest sports empire in history? How did Nike become the symbol worn by champions, the fastest sprinters, and the strongest players of all time? Stay with me until the end, and you'll hear the real secret behind Nike's rise. Because Nike is not just a business, it is a movement. More than shoes, this story is about persistence, belief, and the courage to never quit. And to understand it fully, we must go back to the very beginning, to the birth of the man who started it all. The year was 1938, in the quiet city of Portland, Oregon, where a boy named Philip Hampson Knight was born. He wasn't born into wealth or fame. But what he did carry from the very start was something even more powerful: a burning competitive spirit. Phil's father, Bill Knight, worked as a newspaper publisher. He was a strict man who valued discipline and hard work above all. Money was never simply handed to Phil. If he wanted something, he had to work for it, and that lesson shaped his character from an early age. As a child, Phil stood out. He wasn't the loudest in the room, and he wasn't the strongest either. But he was fast, very fast. Running gave him a sense of freedom like nothing else. Every step made him feel alive, not knowing that this passion would one day change the world. In his teenage years, Phil grew more and more obsessed with track and field. He joined his high school's running team and trained tirelessly every single day. But one thing constantly frustrated him: the shoes. The running shoes of that time were heavy, stiff, and uncomfortable. Each run felt slower because of them. Why aren't there better shoes? Phil wondered. That question stayed in his mind for years, and one day, it would lead him straight to creating Nike. After finishing high school, Phil entered the University of Oregon. There, he wasn't just another student. He became one of the stars on the track team. And this was where destiny stepped in and introduced him to the man who would forever change his future: Bill Bowerman. Bowerman wasn't an ordinary coach. He was a legend. His mission was clear: to make his athletes the fastest runners alive. But he believed speed wasn't just about training. It was also hidden in the shoes. He spent hours experimenting with materials, soles, and designs, trying to craft the perfect pair. And when Phil Knight joined the team, Bowerman noticed something special in him. Phil Knight was not the fastest runner on the track. He wasn't the strongest, and he didn't win every race. But there was something inside him that many others didn't have. He had passion, and he had determination. He kept running, kept pushing, and refused to quit, even when others were better than him. Coach Bill Bowerman noticed this. Bowerman was always experimenting with shoes, searching for new designs that could help athletes run faster. He started testing some of his creations on Phil and the other runners. Phil would slip them on, try them during practice, and give his coach feedback. And that's when something powerful clicked in his mind. What if, Phil thought, We could make the greatest running shoes in the world. Shoes that weren't heavy and stiff, but light, quick, and full of energy. The idea stayed with him like a spark burning in the back of his mind. But he didn't act on it yet. He was still young, still searching for his path. When Phil graduated in 1959, he was at a crossroads. He had earned a degree in business, but he didn't have a job waiting for him. There was no clear plan, no direction. His father wanted him to take the safe route and work at the family newspaper. To Bill Knight, that was the real job. But Phil didn't want ordinary. He wanted more. So he made a decision that seemed crazy at the time. Instead of staying in Portland, he decided to travel the world. He had no job, no serious purpose, just curiosity and a desire to see life beyond America. He went to Hawaii, then to India, Greece, and many other countries. Every stop gave him new experiences and ideas. But there was one country that changed everything: Japan. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Japan was becoming known for innovation. They were rebuilding after the war and creating new industries. One of those industries was sports shoes. A company called Onitsuka Tiger was designing running shoes that were light, flexible, and far ahead of the heavy American models. Phil was fascinated. He studied the shoes, looked at the designs, and thought about the possibilities. What if I could bring these shoes to the United States, he wondered. At that moment, the spark in his mind became a fire. He didn't have money. He didn't own a business. He didn't even know how to start. But he had an idea. That idea pushed him into bold action. Phil scheduled a meeting with Onitsuka Tiger. But there was one small problem. He didn't actually own a company. To get past this, he invented one. He created the name Blue Ribbon Sports and pretended he was its founder. In reality, it was nothing more than a name he made up on the spot. Still, Phil walked into that meeting with confidence. He looked the Japanese executives in the eye and told them, "I want to sell your shoes in America." It was a gamble, but to his surprise, they agreed. They let him place a small order. With just $50, Phil Knight bought his very first batch of Onitsuka shoes. He had no office, no store, and no staff. All he had was his dream, the shoes in his trunk, and the courage to try. Phil began selling them at track meets. He drove his car from event to event, opening the trunk and showing the shoes to athletes and coaches. There were no advertisements, no big speeches. Phil believed the shoes could sell themselves. He would let runners try them on, run a few steps, and feel the difference. The shoes were lighter, faster, and more comfortable. Soon, word began to spread. Athletes started telling each other about these Japanese shoes. Blue Ribbon Sports was slowly growing. But growth came with new problems. Selling shoes was one thing. Running a business was another. Phil needed more inventory, more shoes to keep up with the growing demand. But Onitsuka had a strict rule. They only shipped shoes if he paid in advance. That was a big problem. Phil had almost no savings. Every time he made a little profit from sales, he had to use it right away to buy more shoes. The money came in and went out just as quickly. He had no investors, no financial safety net. If the cash ran out, the dream would be over. Desperate, Phil went to the bank. He walked in with confidence, explained his business, and asked for a loan. But as soon as he said he was selling Japanese shoes, the bank manager frowned. At the time, many Americans didn't trust Japanese products. Japanese shoes? That will never work here, the banker said. The loan was rejected. Phil didn't give up. He went to another bank. Rejected. Then another. Rejected again. Over and over, he faced the same answer: no. Yet each rejection only made him more determined. He believed in the shoes. He believed in his dream. Finally, after weeks of rejection, one small bank gave him a chance. The loan was small, just enough to survive, but it allowed Blue Ribbon Sports to keep going. It wasn't much, but it meant hope. Phil also realized he couldn't run the business alone. He was selling shoes, handling orders, and trying to manage finances all by himself. So he brought on his first employee, a man named Jeff Johnson. Jeff was more than just an employee. He loved running, and he loved shoes. He worked endlessly, helping Phil sell and promote the brand. Together, they opened their very first store. It wasn't big, just a small shop in Santa Monica, California. But for Phil, it was proof that his dream was becoming real. Sales increased, more athletes wore the shoes, and Blue Ribbon Sports was finally growing. For the first time, it looked like everything was moving in the right direction. But then came the call that nearly destroyed it all. One morning, the phone rang. On the other end was Onitsuka Tiger. They told Phil they were ending their partnership with Blue Ribbon Sports. Phil was stunned. Why would they cut ties? He had been selling thousands of their shoes, and business was booming. Then, slowly, the truth came out. Something far worse than he ever imagined. Onitsuka Tiger had been hiding a secret. Behind Phil's back, they were already searching for a new distributor in the United States. Their plan was simple but ruthless. Cut Phil out completely and take over the American market for themselves. If they succeeded, Blue Ribbon Sports would be finished. All of Phil's years of effort, the long nights of planning, the endless drives to track meets, the borrowed money, the constant struggle to stay afloat, would vanish overnight. Everything he had worked for would be gone. At that moment, Phil faced two choices. He could walk away, let Onitsuka destroy him, and go back to living an ordinary life. Or he could fight back, build something new, and risk everything in the process. Deep down, Phil knew there was only one answer. He decided to create his very own shoe company. But the decision brought a terrifying problem. Phil had no factory to make shoes, no team of manufacturers, and no money to fund production. Onitsuka was about to cut ties, and he had only a few short months to figure out how to survive. It was a race against time. Phil called his small team together and made a bold announcement. "We are going to design our own shoes," he told them. Everyone understood the risk. If they failed, the company would collapse. But if they succeeded, they might finally be free from Onitsuka's control. The next challenge was choosing a name. A shoe company needed an identity, something strong, inspiring, and unforgettable. For weeks, Phil and his team brainstormed ideas. Names like Dimension 6 and Falcon were tossed around, but none of them felt right. Then something extraordinary happened. One night, Jeff Johnson, Phil's first employee, had a dream. In that dream, he saw the Greek goddess of victory. Her name was Nike. When Jeff woke up, he immediately called Phil and told him. The name was short, powerful, and full of meaning. Phil agreed. And just like that, Nike was born. But a name alone wasn't enough. The company needed a symbol, a mark that people would recognize instantly. Phil asked a young graphic design student, Carolyn Davidson, to help. She sketched several ideas until she finally created a simple curved line that looked like motion itself. It represented speed, power, and victory. That mark became the swoosh. Her payment? Just $35. With a new name and a logo, Nike was ready to fight. But there was still one major problem. They didn't actually have a shoe. Phil needed someone who could invent a design that would beat Onitsuka Tiger. And there was only one man he trusted to do it. His former coach, Bill Bowerman. Bowerman had spent years obsessed with creating faster shoes. One morning, while making breakfast, he looked at his waffle iron and had a wild idea. What if the sole of a shoe had the same grid-like pattern? The grooves could give better grip while keeping the shoe light. He poured melted rubber into the waffle iron, pressed it down, and created the first prototype of the Nike sole. The result was groundbreaking. The shoe was lighter, faster, and gave athletes better traction than anything else on the market. This design became the first Nike shoe, the Nike Waffle Trainer. With that invention, Phil finally had a weapon in his fight against Onitsuka. Nike was no longer just a name. It was a real competitor. But victory did not come easily. Even with their own shoe, Nike had no money left. Every dollar Phil had went into developing the Waffle Trainer and breaking away from Onitsuka. To survive, Nike needed factories, materials, and a way to get their shoes into the hands of athletes. All of that required millions of dollars that Phil didn't have. Once again, he had to face the banks. Phil hated begging for money, but he had no choice. He carried the Nike shoes into bank after bank, telling managers about his vision and showing them the Waffle Trainer. But the bankers laughed. "You want us to invest in a tiny shoe company competing against Adidas and Puma? That's impossible," they said. Every single bank said no. Phil was furious. He had already proven that his shoes worked. Athletes loved them, yet nobody believed in him. Still, he refused to quit. Finally, one small bank agreed to give him a loan, but with harsh conditions. The loan had a very high interest rate. Phil had to personally guarantee it, which meant if Nike failed, he would lose everything: his home, his savings, and his future. But Phil signed anyway, because to him, failure was not an option. Just as things seemed under control, disaster struck again. Onitsuka Tiger filed a lawsuit against Nike. They accused Phil of stealing their shoe designs and claimed Nike was selling copies of Onitsuka's products. The lawsuit threatened to destroy Nike. If they lost, the company would be forced to shut down and pay millions of dollars. The stress was crushing. Phil had poured his life into Nike, and now everything was at risk. For months, the legal battle dragged on. It seemed like Onitsuka might win. Then, in a shocking twist, the court discovered secret documents. These papers showed that Onitsuka had planned to betray Phil long before Nike existed. That changed everything. The evidence proved that Phil wasn't the villain, Onitsuka was. In the end, the court ruled in favor of Nike. Phil finally cut ties with Onitsuka forever. Nike had survived its first great battle. But the war was far from over. Winning the lawsuit was only the beginning. Now, Nike faced an even harder challenge: becoming a real brand. At that time, Nike didn't have television ads, famous athletes, or sponsorship deals. They were still a small company fighting to survive in a market ruled by giants. Phil and his team got creative. Instead of paying for expensive advertising, they gave free shoes directly to athletes. Runners, basketball players, and coaches started wearing them in competitions. People noticed. The shoes were lighter, faster, and more comfortable. Word of mouth spread quickly. Nike began gaining momentum, but they still needed a product that would grab the world's attention. They needed a shoe so unique that people couldn't ignore it. Once again, Phil turned to Bowerman. Bowerman wasn't done experimenting. After inventing the Waffle Trainer, he kept searching for better ideas. He tested different materials, redesigned soles, and worked endlessly in his workshop. After months of trial and error, he finally created something new, a shoe that would become legendary. That shoe was the Nike Cortez. It wasn't just another running shoe. It was the beginning of Nike's rise to global fame. And soon, the world would start paying attention. The Nike Cortez was a game changer. It was light, stylish, and offered the best cushioning that any runner or athlete had ever experienced. When athletes laced them up, they felt faster, stronger, and ready to win. For the first time, Nike had a shoe that could stand beside Adidas and Puma and even challenge them. Then came a magical opportunity. The 1972 Olympics were just around the corner, and Nike made sure its shoes were everywhere. Athletes wore them during races, marathons, and track events. When people around the world turned on their televisions, they saw Nike shoes crossing finish lines, setting records, and winning medals. The world had finally noticed. Nike was still small, still fighting to survive, but now the swoosh was on the global stage. Every image of a victorious athlete wearing Nike added to the brand's power. For Phil Knight, this was proof that his dream was alive. But Nike was far from the top. By the late 1970s, the company was growing quickly, yet it still lived in the shadow of Adidas. Adidas had deep pockets, global connections, and superstar athletes on their side. If Nike wanted to win, they needed something huge, something that would change everything. That moment came in 1984. Nike made a decision that would transform them forever. Instead of chasing every athlete, they put their future in the hands of one young man, a rookie basketball player that most brands ignored. His name was Michael Jordan. At the time, Jordan was talented but unproven. He had not yet become a legend. Adidas didn't believe in him. Converse wasn't interested either. But Nike saw what no one else could see: potential, charisma, and greatness waiting to explode. Nike had a radical idea. They didn't just want Jordan to wear their shoes. They wanted to build an entire brand around him. But there was one obstacle. Michael Jordan didn't want Nike. Jordan dreamed of signing with Adidas. He even told his agent, "I don't want to meet with Nike." Nike refused to give up. Instead, they turned to the one person who could change his mind: his mother, Dolores Jordan. Dolores listened to Nike's proposal. She saw their passion and understood the opportunity. Then she told her son, "Michael, you're going to hear them out." Because of his mother's wisdom, Michael finally agreed to sit down with Nike. Nike prepared the biggest gamble in their history. They offered Jordan a massive contract, unlike anything they had ever given before. More importantly, they designed a shoe just for him, a shoe that reflected his personality, his style, and his energy. That shoe became the Air Jordan 1. At first, the NBA banned the shoe. Its bold red and black colors broke league rules. But Nike turned the ban into genius marketing. They told the world, "The NBA can't stop you from wearing them." Suddenly, everyone wanted the shoes that even the NBA couldn't ignore. Then Michael Jordan started winning. He flew across the court, scored points like nobody else, and became a superstar almost overnight. Kids, teenagers, and even adults all wanted to be like Mike. Air Jordans sold out everywhere. Nike couldn't keep up with demand. In just a few short years, the company transformed from a growing shoe business into a billion-dollar empire. And it was all because Nike believed in one young athlete when no one else did. Chapter 4: The Empire of Nike. Nike was no longer struggling. It had become a global force, a brand that represented victory, greatness, and dreams. Everywhere you looked, athletes wore Nike. Michael Jordan dominated the NBA in Air Jordans. Cristiano Ronaldo ran across football fields in Nike boots. Serena Williams smashed her opponents in Nike gear. From basketball courts to tennis courts to football stadiums, the swoosh was everywhere. But something was still missing. Nike had the athletes, the shoes, and the momentum. What they didn't have was a message, a slogan that could inspire not only professionals, but also ordinary people. They needed words that everyone could remember. In the late 1980s, advertising genius Dan Whedon had an idea. He wanted something short, powerful, and universal. A phrase that told people they were capable of anything. After brainstorming, he found the words, "Just do it." It was simple. It was unforgettable. When Nike launched their first "Just Do It" commercial in 1988, it featured an 80-year-old man running a marathon. Viewers were stunned. Nike wasn't just talking to elite athletes anymore. They were talking to everyone. "Just Do It" changed everything. Suddenly, buying Nike wasn't just about sneakers. It was about courage, persistence, and chasing your dreams. Nike was no longer selling products. They were selling a mindset. The results were explosive. In 1988, Nike made $1, $2 billion in sales. By 1996, they made $6 per billion. By 2003, over $10 billion. Today, Nike is worth more than $190 billion, bigger than Adidas, Puma, and Reebok combined. And it all started with a man selling shoes from his car trunk. Phil Knight had believed when nobody else did. He had risked everything, and his vision had built an empire. Even after Michael Jordan retired, Nike's empire grew. Air Jordans alone became a brand worth over $5 billion a year. People lined up for hours, sometimes days, just to buy a new pair. Nike wasn't just part of sports anymore. It was part of culture. Nike expanded across the world. They signed football clubs like Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain. They entered Asia, dominating markets in China and Japan. They partnered with Brazil's national team in South America and sponsored rising stars across Africa. Wherever you went, the swoosh was there. But the journey wasn't without challenges. Nike faced scandals about factory conditions and accusations of using sweatshops. The 2008 financial crash nearly destroyed their profits. Competitors like Adidas, Puma, and Under Armour tried to take their place. Yet Nike always fought back. They improved working conditions. They signed new superstars. They created innovative products. Every time people thought Nike was finished, they came back stronger. Because winners never quit. And Nike had built its empire on that very idea. Today, Nike earns more than $50 billion a year, employs over 75,000 people, and sells in nearly every country on earth. Nike's story is not just about shoes. It is about believing in yourself when no one else does. It is about chasing dreams even when the world calls you crazy. Phil Knight had no money, no investors, and no guarantees. But he had a vision. That vision became a revolution. And Nike's story teaches us a lesson. No dream is too big, no challenge is too hard, and no failure is the end. If you keep going, if you believe in yourself, anything is possible. Now the question is for you. Do you believe in the power of never giving up? Share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, your own success story is waiting to be written. All you have to do is just do it. Nike stands today as one of the world's leading sportswear and athletic footwear companies, known for innovation, quality, and iconic branding. Founded in 1964, the company has grown into a global powerhouse, offering a wide range of shoes, apparel, and equipment for athletes of all levels. Beyond performance gear, Nike has become a cultural symbol, blending sports with fashion and lifestyle. The brand continues to lead with sustainable practices, digital innovation, and collaborations with top athletes and designers. Today, Nike isn't just selling products. It's inspiring movement, performance, and self-expression worldwide. Its global influence continues to expand, driven by creativity and cutting-edge technology. And as sports culture evolves, Nike remains at the forefront, shaping the future of athletic wear and inspiring the next generation. Nike stands as one of the most recognized and influential brands in the world, known for shaping not only the sportswear industry, but also global culture. From its early beginnings in the 1960s to becoming a symbol of performance, innovation, and lifestyle, the company has built a reputation for creating products that blend cutting-edge technology with modern design. Its iconic swoosh logo and powerful "Just Do It" slogan have become synonymous with motivation, excellence, and achievement, making Nike more than just a sportswear brand. It is an inspiration to athletes and dreamers alike. In recent years, Nike has faced a rapidly changing global market, including shifts in consumer preferences, challenges in supply chains, and increased competition. Yet, instead of standing still, the company has embraced transformation. Leadership has implemented bold strategies focused on improving efficiency, launching innovative products, and strengthening connections with athletes and customers across the globe. These efforts aim to reinforce Nike's position as a leader in performance footwear, apparel, and equipment while expanding its influence in lifestyle and fashion. Sustainability has also become a core focus. Through initiatives dedicated to reducing waste, lowering environmental impact, and using sustainable materials, Nike continues to invest in a future where performance and responsibility go hand in hand. This vision goes beyond product design. It reflects a commitment to inspiring positive change in the industry and the world. At the heart of Nike's success is its ability to merge innovation, culture, and storytelling. Collaborations with athletes, designers, and cultural icons allow the brand to remain fresh, relevant, and deeply connected to its audience. Each campaign, product line, and design serves as a reminder of the company's dedication to helping people push boundaries, whether on the field, in the gym, or in everyday life. Looking forward, Nike aims to continue leading the evolution of sports and lifestyle, whereby embracing new technologies, sustainable practices, and creative marketing strategies. Despite economic challenges and intense competition, the company's legacy of resilience and innovation ensures it remains at the forefront of the global sportswear market. More than a brand, Nike is a movement, one that encourages people everywhere to rise to their potential, chase their dreams, and, above all, just do it.